Bob Buchanan and Bill Johns dancing together is what that video is. It's unbelievable. I know we're live, but everybody needs to see that. Phil has no idea what to do. Hey, welcome to Do the Work. We're live today.
Where do you guys go? I'm literally letting you go.
Yeah. It's a party. I think we've re-subtitled this "Do the Party" today. That's what we're going to call this. Because it is our end of the year episode. We're going to take the next couple of weeks off, and we've invited some of our friends and Jared to come join us. I say that right as Jared takes off his earphones. Fantastic.
He had a premonition. He's storming off the set now.
Yeah, he's storming off the set.
That's awesome. Terry is right. This is a special episode with special guests, with special names, with a special title. So it's about as special as it can get. In a few minutes, we'll begin the substance of whatever it is our actual conversation will be. Terry is in the modest driver's seat for today. I do have a possible few questions if Terry didn't even prepare for those, because you'll have our pre-show question time.
It is our pre-show question. We can't ask a Christmas question because we brought Jared on the broadcast.
Yeah, we can.
The best person to answer that question.
Yeah, for sure. So here's the question. I don't know how many of you watch football. No, Mark and I. My name's all sports on here for this reason. But the other night, a team lost a game. Florida lost a game because a guy picked up a shoe and threw it 40 yards, and that allowed LSU to win the game. Everybody should have seen this by now. So this goes down, by the way, is the most ridiculous thing this guy's ever done in public. What is the most ridiculous thing you've ever done in public?
That's a lot of options.
Wow. That's a good question. Now, I'm going to start with Shane because I know the list is lengthy, so we just want to get the top one because with his barbershop thing, there's a ton of stories with there alone. So, Shane, what's the most ridiculous thing you've ever done in public?
Well, this was sort of in public and sort of not, but I think maybe it'll qualify for these purposes. So you just mentioned my barbershop stuff. So my quartet was invited to be in the Life Enrichment series down at Florida College about 7 years ago. And the show went really, really well. There were a lot of people who turned out. It was great to see a bunch of old friends, and it was just a wonderful night. So at the conclusion of the show, we were going to go backstage, circle around, and then go outside to say hi to everybody out on the Hutchinson porch. But the lights, of course, were quite bright on stage. And when we got behind the curtain, it was pitch black. And I mean, the contrast from the bright lights on stage to the pitch blackness backstage made it even worse. So I was trying to step out, for those of you who've been back there, this little side door to then go down the outside aisle and so forth. And I had a cup of water in my hand. And as I was stepping down, I couldn't see those two little tiny steps that go from the backstage area down to the side. And I missed them. And I went flying and falling. And, because several of us here are big guys, when you're a big guy and you fall, it's like it's slow motion. So, but what I was so proud of is as I was falling, I tucked my shoulder and I kept the cup up and did not spill a drop of water through the entire roll. It was like the Olympic torch. I managed to keep it from hitting the ground. So I just wish everybody out in front of the curtain could have seen that. They would have been amazed by my clumsiness, but then also, dare I say, my cat-like agility to recover and then get on outside. But that would certainly qualify as one of my favorite dumb things I've ever done.
Okay, Jared, what you got?
Oh, there's just too many possibilities. I was trying to think as I was listening to Shane's and getting distracted. We might better ask my wife for this one, but I mean, there's so many options. I don't know. Come back to me. I'm trying to think of
He's
which
stalling
ones
to
are.
not share. Mark, what you got?
Well, I have become infamous for an incident around this time of year after smoking a turkey and
Yes.
improperly handling the ashes and the coals that were left after, and
Mrs. Russell got a new fence out of this.
only 8 fire truck brigade commander, police officers, and EMT units showed up at my house, as well as a southern used car lot of family people moving all of their cars to get away from the inferno that I created on my garbage can. So, yeah, that's a memory.
There you go, Phil. What you got?
Firstly, I want
Or should
to
we ask Michael
cite
Walls what you've
Brother
got?
Walls, who says, "Hey Phil, remember that time? Me neither. Our friendship goes back to when we were 5. So we have an extensive list of stupid. I will not throw him under the bus. I could, but then he would throw me back under the bus, back it up twice, and then make sure that the wheels spun on my hide. So I will not do that because I'm slightly smarter than I used to be.
What a visual.
But I will add this. There was a time when I was driving my Ford Ranger in Bowling Green, Kentucky, from our apartment to a Bible study with Bilbert Allison. And Bilbert was telling me all these times of him jumping things in Athens, Alabama, when he was down there for a little while. And I had this little cutoff route that went from my apartment, but you didn't know that it was road because it wasn't actually a road. And so we're going down a cul-de-sac. And at the end of the cul-de-sac, it just looks like there's a curb there. And there's a street behind it because that's how you built things in Bowling Green. You just did whatever you wanted, it seemed. Roads didn't need to connect to one another. So I'm accelerating straight at the house that's at the end of the cul-de-sac, intending to turn left. I'll just say that we did elevate that vehicle beyond its capacity. And maybe it was a little faster than I intended. And maybe there was a little consequential impact to the vehicle that might have required me to expend the little money to no money I had to repair the damage that was done. But it may also have been to the car, to the truck.
Was Waylon Jennings the narrator?
Yeah. It may also have allowed.
When you took off, did you hear some guy say, "This isn't going to end good"?
Yeah. It may also allow Bilbert and I to not need to go to the bathroom.
These boys better grow wings because they're about to fly.
The only thing that was necessary was Bilbert's horn that he used to have in his truck. The surprising left turn was a little bit more lefty than we anticipated.
All right, Jared,
that's
what you got?
The lowest one I could think of that doesn't involve the law.
Well, this one sort of does involve the law, which I think is a good transition there, but only in like a sideways thing. So I guess I was a senior in high school, and my brother and I were taking Taekwondo, and I was going for my black belt exam second time around, and we had to break bricks. Well, I bought the wrong kind of bricks. So if you've done martial arts, you realize there are certain bricks that you buy to break and certain they don't. I bought a paving stone, and so I punched the brick and I was like, weird, it didn't break. It should have broke. I hit it hard enough. I'll hit it again. So I hit it again. Well, little did I know, I'd actually broken 6 bones in my hand the first time. I then further broke them the second time. And I was like, well, this is weird, fine. And I just kicked it and that broke it. Well, it was fine. But then the swelling started getting worse and worse and worse. So I sent my little brother, who was with me, who was 3 years younger, out to grab something from the car. So I could just wrap it up and finish everything else. Well, he comes back in and everything is going great until I realized when we go out, he had locked my keys in the car. So I'm trying to break into my car with a broken arm. Okay. And the cops see us and pull in or like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, really, it's my car. They're like, why are you trying to break in? I was like, look at the keys. They're like, well, why? You're not even doing it very well. I was like, well, my hand is broken. So finally they end up calling the person because we didn't have phones or anything else back then, And so they end up calling the person who was there that could verify it was me. They helped me break into the car. Then they left. and I had to drive myself to the ER where my dad was working to tell them that I'd broken my hand several times in Taekwondo. And by that point, my arm was just completely black and blue and everything else. And my brother's like, you shouldn't have locked the keys in the car. I was like, you did it.
Yeah, I'll straight up say that this probably could also happen to 2020, Jared. I don't see a lot of variance in the stories.
Hey, I haven't had any concussions this year.
You mean the guy who averages a half an injury per UDFAC game to this point?
I have broken 2 fingers this year, but that wasn't bad. I mean, fingers, you just tape them up and go.
Yeah. All right, well, we're out of time, so let's move on.
Nope.
Well, look, the most ridiculous thing I've ever done was not in public, so I get an out on that, by the way. Although I think my family has talked about it so much that it is public, so I'll go ahead and share it. And this is, look, I'm not proud of this. Dumb on my part. Phil's going to mock me if he's not heard this story. I shot our mattress one time. And it's kind of one of those deals where, for those who don't know, I've shot competitively. I've carried. I don't carry much anymore, not because of this. But I was dechambering my Glock. I did not check to make sure it dechambered. It did not. I went to what we call decock it. Luckily, it pointed it away, which, by the way, safety, never point that at yourself as you do that. And it went off. I was unprepared. My dog was unprepared, who has anxiety issues to this day because of this. Every thunderstorm drives her nuts. And when we sold that house, we replaced the carpet. We found the bullet fragment under the bed in the concrete. It's a true story. So, look, that, and by the way, I'm very blessed that did not turn out more seriously than it did. And I sent the obligatory text to my wife, who was at school, saying, I'm okay. I just shot the mattress. So anyway, yeah.
Look, no good thing happens with I'm okay.
Look, I'm just going to tell you that, if you, sadly, even the best of gun safety guys have one of those stories, it seems. We've all seen the ATF guy that shoots himself in the leg telling people how to be safe with guns. So
Stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is. All right, so let's get to the show today. We asked a couple of friends to join us, obviously. Friends of the program, so to say. Listen, and here's the thought process. Phil said I was kind of in the driver's seat today. I don't know about you guys, but every time I turn around, everybody is bemoaning 2020. All we hear is things like, that's so 2020, or how bad 2020 is, or hey, I can't wait till 2021. Which, by the way, if you think the calendar flip in January 1st is going to remove things, I'll let Jared be Dr. Death on that. But what we want to look at today is just lessons learned from 2020, but I really want to keep this positive. I'm tired of all the negativity. This is our last show for the year. I think, Phil and I have talked about this, I think all you guys would agree with this. There's a lot of good things that have happened to us in 2020, or a lot of great lessons that we have learned along the way. And so I'd just like for us to really think about that and have that discussion today about what good things we've learned from 2020. And I'll get us kicked off because one of the things that I've learned from 2020 is just how much I need the fellowship of my brethren in person. Like a lot of places, we had a shutdown period, and I preached to the basement wall for about, I don't know, I think it was close to 3 months. It was between 2 and 3 months. And no matter how many times I raised my voice or whatever, the basement wall never gave me any affirmation at all. Like, it never responded to anything I said. And I'll tell you, I still struggle with that. We're meeting. Some people are outside, some people are inside, and the people inside have masks, and it's still really hard to read faces when people wear masks. And it's still, I miss that. And I'm not advocating the no mask, by the way. I'm a mask advocate. No comments, please. But I just realized how much, as a preacher, I needed that. I needed that direct response. I needed that in person. But also as a Christian, it's really hard for our family to just be that isolated. And what a blessing it is to be together and see each other in the flesh. That's the greatest lesson perhaps for me personally. So I'll kick us off with that one, and we'll just kind of go around the horn a little bit, maybe twice. So in my screen, at least, the next guy would be Jared. So Jared, toss something out there for us, and we'll just keep going around.
I mean, not to, so that I don't kind of repeat the same thing you did, because I feel the same way preaching and then teaching at the end of the spring and the beginning of this digitally. It's just, it's tough. It's tough, but in a good way. This has been the longest that we have been out of the PICU with Abigail. For those who don't know, our youngest daughter, Abigail, who's 5, has a very dangerous degenerative disease called spinal muscular atrophy, SMA. You can look up curesma.org if you want to know more about it. It's like Lou Gehrig's disease, except it affects children. Well, we've been in the PICU for a long, long time, multiple times a year, because anytime she gets a respiratory bug, it gets real bad. So she had the coronavirus, not COVID-19, a different version of it before it was cool. And we were in the PICU for a month. She got the flu and we were in the PICU for 3 weeks. She got the flu again. We were in the PICU for 6 weeks. But because of, and I think it is probably likely just the additional precautions people are taking, the additional precautions we're taking, we are now 1 year out of the PICU without any problems. And that has been an incredible blessing. It has been an amazing thing. We're glad that for whatever cause that's been the case. And related to that, we've been so pleased by how many of our brethren have been very cautious about interacting with us because of her. And that's really, really been encouraging to us. So we'll say, look, it's probably this, but I've got allergies, but I'm not going to come around because I just want to make sure that everything's okay. And just seeing how people have responded in those ways, of a lot of different things, because they are kind of being aware of her and careful of her, has been extremely encouraging to us.
Yeah, that's fantastic news, by the way. Praise God for that. You guys haven't had to do that. Shane, you're next, buddy.
Yeah, I think that what this year has just reinforced in my mind is something that we all know. And some of us, like, for example, Jared and his whole family experience on a regular basis. We don't really get to choose that we are going to face adversity. It's going to happen. We don't know exactly when or how, but we all know that adversity is a part of life. And adversity presents us with an opportunity to experience unanticipated blessings. Because we don't anticipate the adversity, we don't anticipate the good that can come through it. But we have to be willing to embrace that reality and then seek to find a way to glorify God in unexpected circumstances. And this year has really provided all of us an opportunity to do that. And I think that as often as we sometimes get frustrated with how things are, and sometimes with the lack of a cooperative spirit, I mean, we've all seen examples like, for example, what we're doing right now. I mean, so much Bible content has gone out this year and reached people that it would not have reached otherwise. So that just in and of itself is a great blessing. And I think we've also seen Christians take an even more active interest in each other and look out for each other and care for one another. So I think that the big takeaway for me this year has been that because we believe God is sovereign and he's all-knowing and all-powerful, we believe that God can work through adverse circumstances to bring about an even greater good. And I think that we've seen that in many ways happen this year, and it should be a cause for realism on the one hand, but also a sense of optimism, not the optimism which denies the adversity, but the optimism which says this adversity is an opportunity. And that's been a great blessing this year.
Yeah, great thought. I think one of the things to add to that this adversity has caused us to do is rethink all the things we do, even congregationally, and what really matters. And it's forced us to reevaluate even some of our traditions in the process. I think that's been a very healthy thing along those same lines, at least for us here, and I'm sure for you guys. Mark, what you got, buddy? I know you had 6 things, so
it's a long number.
He had a long list. He was ready.
I was joking with Phil early on that I have 6 things, but 3 of them are patience. Early on, before all this happened, I thought that I was a relatively patient person. Serving now as a bishop in the church here, it was a long long process of trying to figure out the best way to follow guidelines, and balance everything. And snarky comments, but just coming to understand what patience really was, and then some of my self-whining and self-pitying. And then I think about Abraham, and I think about Job, and I think about, so many Bible characters. And I was like, I had no idea what patience was, much less dealing with a child with a degenerative disease, or dealing with a wife who passed from cancer. This year has taught, I've always known the blessings of God and how incredibly blessed I was, considering I'm here in paradise, right, Shane? That this and this is really more of an introspective thing than some of the things that you guys are talking about. But it's been humbling, and it's caused me to rethink a lot of things personally, both in my work and service and ministry, but also just to be more cautious and try to be more patient. Those who know me know I'm kind of a bull in a china shop in many ways, and I'm trying to take the point off of that spear a little bit because of this, because it's just not, my power doesn't really solve anything anymore. And I was under the impression that I could power through things. And that's probably been 3 points of the 6 points, all joking aside. It was going to be patience, lack of control, patience, be careful in judgment, and patience. Those are my 6 points.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil, finally get to you.
I've been practicing a bit of Mark's encouragement, which is patience and not trying to interrupt everybody, which is counter to Jared's nature, which is to be hyper in Bible class, and which is part of the blessings for me that are on the table for this year. For the first time, and I can probably imagine, on most Sundays, I'm able to listen to a sermon preached by one of my brethren. In the discipling process of an evangelist, that's actually an incredibly rare thing. And so 2020 has given me that, and it's challenged me. It has reminded me of what it's like to be a listener, to be one who is trying to profit from the labor of another. And I'll tell you, it's a blessing. I hope that it's reflected in the work that I do in the days that go ahead. And so on the first part of the table, that's a blessing. And it comes in some rare spots at sometimes. There are some of our brethren who are very uncomfortable in a digital context. They're very uncomfortable being recorded. They're very uncomfortable being on a camera. And some of them are older than us as a group. And I've been able to listen to them preach and see them preach, which is an entirely different thing than listening to their audio recordings. And that's been a blessing as well. Thirdly, and I'll drop it at 3 here for right now, but they're all kind of in the same basket.
Notice I said 1 and he went with 3.
Yeah, I can do what I want. I don't live by your rules. I have one hand, 5 fingers. So I don't think Jared and I would have been able to pull off our judges study had we not been stuck in a cage. It took a lot of extra time to do that. Not just the technical time, but it was like preparing for the class twice, because we prepare for the class and then we prepare for each other and then we teach the class. And I thought that refining process was excellent and a blessing as well from a teacher's standpoint.
Well, on the preparing for each other, I know how tough that is, Jared, to prepare for Phil. And you did a great job with that. I only did 1 because I followed the rules. I want y'all to notice how bad Phil is a backseat driver when I have the keys, by the way. That's something to point out there. Want to say we've not had a lot of comments. If you guys out there listening, and I know there's several of you listening, if you have something to add to the discussion, drop it in the comments, and we'd love to hear your perspective on that. I think one of the great blessings for me has been the guys that are here today. I think a lot of people don't realize that behind the scenes, obviously Phil and I have grown closer the last couple of years, but specifically these four other guys here that are with me today, I've grown closer to during the lockdown period. I mean, Jared and I, we knew of each other. I think we talked some,
Maybe
but
once.
yeah, but there's been a lot of texting and messaging back and forth with Jared and some study, and that strengthened me. And Shane and Mark have been friends for a long time, but we kind of have this little group chat thing on Messenger that's a daily kind of. And by the way, it covers a whole gamut. I don't want to pull the covers back on that because some of it's kind of silly, but and that's been a beautiful blessing to me to have this group of guys to talk to. Because I'm a lot like Shane. Both of us are really extroverted. We really need that interaction with other people. And when we are locked down and it's just me and my family, that's not the interaction that I need most of the time. That's not meant to be ugly, Mark. Don't take it that way. But this has been a blessing for me to kind of get closer to other guys and to don't want to go all weepy and touchy-feely, but to kind of develop even closer relationships in other ways. And I think that's happened for a lot of people. I think a lot of us have figured out how to connect more personally without being in person during this time, which I think there's some benefit to that for sure. And so that's a huge blessing for me. So I'll just open it up for anybody else. Anybody else have anything to add, or maybe even smaller lessons or something that maybe you have on mind? I mean, I know Mark has 3 more. So we'll
I
do
would
a feeding
like to just
frenzy.
I'd like to just tag into my tag team partner here, Terry, and just say that I think that preaching, depending on your circumstance and the arrangement, can be a very isolated and solitary work to begin with. I know some of our brothers are in situations where maybe there's a 2-person work or something like that. But I know that in my case, I'm the only preacher for Valrico. And so it's already an isolated kind of life. Anyway, one of the things I enjoyed so much about doing what Jared does is having that, that collegial atmosphere of, people who are all in the same office and, can all, go grab a bite and talk about things together and so forth. So because preaching is, at least for me, has been such an isolating thing, you spend so much time studying and preparing things on your own. Then when you couple that with this year, which has, required a lot of distancing, and when you're a single person as I am, it's really made this a very isolated year. And so it's made exactly what Terry just talked about even more important, which is to have outlets where, although, as people have often pointed out, you can physically distance without having to socially or emotionally distance. And so having a lot of opportunities emerge this year that have given me the chance to connect with other people, and particularly with fellow brothers who are working in the Word, definitely has been a great blessing this year. Much needed for sure.
And let me break in real quick. Peggy wanted me to introduce everybody, so she said the names on the screen aren't helping. That's Phil's fault. Let me introduce everybody. Obviously, I'm Terry Francis. If you see the tag, second smartest person in my house, that's Jared Saltz. Who Jared is, for those who don't know, is a professor at Florida College down in Tampa, and also preaches with the 56th Street, right?
Palmetto.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry about that. So Jared, and then Shane Scott, who I think is now I'm available, ladies.
Oh my word!
I'm not in charge of this. Shane preaches at the Valrico congregation. Corn Bishop is Mark Russell from Valparaiso, Indiana, also known to us as Paradise. And Tacos is Phil Martin down at East Side Church of Christ in, I guess technically, are you Sharpsburg or Noonan technically, or both? Just kind of both.
It's basically Atlanta. Come on.
Atlanta. By the way, I'm in the Birmingham area. So we cover... we literally cover like 4 states here, so it's fantastic. Jared and Shane are neighbors, but we had to get them on a Zoom call to see each other. So here we are. So that's kind of hopefully gets all the names out there. And there you go. All right, so back to that. Anybody else? Mark, you had like 6. You've only shared 1. So
I actually shared 3 of the 6 because Patience, it was sort of a joke, Terry, about my 6.
That was
One
a
of the
good joke,
things that
obviously. Flew right over.
one of the things that really has that has really dawned on me. I maybe it's not much of a blessing, but I've always known, and everybody knows who studies the New Testament knows of the warnings about judging brothers and sisters, and being involved in making decisions on when to come back. Our congregation started probably, I know, much sooner in person in the building meetings than other places. And what was interesting is we had some judge us as being faithless because we suspended in-person meetings for a while. And then we were judged as arrogant for actually starting again. And so it's not funny, but the idea of just being careful in judgment and understanding, this is a present day application of all of those warnings as it comes to the fore. And just the culture around us is so very judgmental and so very, we're quick to damn people without any thought. And this has really hit home for me, and being careful, either both not laying hands too hastily on someone or being quick to say you're just a bunch of faithless heretics for doing something different than I would do.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think we've probably been retaught the principle of autonomy in congregations through all of this. And by the way, that was a needed lesson, I think. I think that in a lot of ways we've forgotten that what works here doesn't always work there, and that's okay. Like I said, there's a lot of things I think that we were forced to reevaluate about our congregations, about how we function and how we, even our decision-making process. I think one of the benefits of that is, at least where I'm at, I think that shepherds became more aware of the needs of the sheep more specifically. And our shepherds did a great job, but I think they thought more individualistically. I think there's a tendency sometimes to just think about the majority, and yet in a lot of places, this is a case where the minority may be a very important consideration. You take Jared's family. That's a very specific situation that has some really high needs in a time like this. You have families like that at certain congregations, and I think shepherds probably were more tuned into that because of all this, which I think is good in what they do, and so I think that was another blessing and benefit that we've kind of been forced to think about. And I know here, by the way, how we worship has changed for now. That doesn't mean it won't go back to that, but we're doing things differently. And I think one of the lessons learned from that is the ability to worship, the ability to be together is more important than the process sometimes, and that we can change the process. Like for us, we only sing outside still, and that's 2 songs. And the fact that we can sing it all is the blessing, rather than being so upset that we can't go back to the way things were. And I think that that's caused us to just kind of tune in to what's important sometimes and rethink about all those things.
Kind of going along with that, I think one of the neat things is how this has kind of pushed us out of our comfort zones in a lot of ways. One of the reasons James says we're supposed to count it joy is because now we can actually see what's important to us. When we're tested, we get to see our results in ourselves. And this suffering has allowed us to recognize, hey, other people are doing this all the time. Here I've hated this so much. Imagine what it's like for shut-ins. Imagine, for that's your life, right? And how much of that, what are we doing to help them? Because I hate this. And so other people in the situation are going to hate it as well. And so kind of pushing us outside that box, or like you said, that it kind of allows us to rethink some things. We have been so richly blessed in this nation that, most of us have church buildings, where we can go and don't have to worry about all these other things. And now some of that's been taken away in some cases, in some places of the country. And we can say, well, you know what? That's the historical normal right there. What are we doing? We've been saying the church isn't the building for generations. Do we believe it? Now it's a chance for us to say, okay, are we going to put our money where our mouth is? Is this a chance where we can see, okay, this is not who we are. We can meet outside and still be the church, or we can split up and meet in people's homes and that's the church, or we can do, and allows us to kind of rethink some of these issues, because we are the restoration movement. And that means that we're always needing to restore ourselves, because we're never perfect. We're not the restored movement, right? We haven't gotten everything right. And so we need to kind of dig in our trench lines and never move backwards or forwards. And this is allowing us, I hope, and I've seen it in myself at least, a chance to say, okay, what can we do better? What can we do to be more like the first century church? What can we do? And to the extent that other people are thinking about that, and I think they are, that is an enormous blessing. Because it's much better to think about those sorts of things before we're broken and have to have another, split and everything else like that, than waiting until we get pushed to that end. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm hoping that other people have been using this opportunity to push forward and think about these things as well.
Yeah, I think that's
I have to just tie in right there. We at Valrico a year ago, in fact, almost to the day, I think December the 16th was our first Sunday in our new building. So, and this building project took a really long time. It was like, if you ever seen those videos of like the early prototype airplanes that can never quite get off the ground, like there's that one plunger one always makes me laugh, whenever you see it. So this building project was like 4 years in the making. And so finally we got into the building like December the 16th. But all along, I was concerned, and the shepherds were concerned, and others were concerned, that the group would sort of think, now we're in our new building, we've arrived, and we've done all that we can do, and now we can just sit back and be at ease in Zion, And then the pandemic hits, and building is closed for a couple of months, and that was a great opportunity for us to, in practice, do exactly what Jared was just talking about, which is to just remind ourselves that the church is not the building. And as grateful as we are for a new facility, and as beautiful as it is and so forth, that this was a great reminder for us that, hey, look, this is not the sum total of our identity. And there's a lot more to being a Christian than just simply coming to this physical location. And I think it's turned out to be a great blessing in that sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, by the way, until this year, we're just kind of stuck in the routine and in our comfort zones in a lot of those areas, that I don't know that we would ever really be willing to leave unless we were forced. I've thought in some ways, you look at the Tower of Babel incident, or Babel, or however you want to pronounce it there, Jared. You look at that incident and how the people didn't want to be fruitful, multiply, and God kind of forced them to do that. And you look at the dispersion from Jerusalem, how they didn't want to be fruitful spiritually and multiply, and God forced them to do that. And I do wonder if there's a side of this, that a side blessing is that we just got so stuck in our routines and our traditions and our comfort that we didn't want to continue. We had, to use Jared's terms, I think in some ways we kind of consider ourselves to be restored rather than in this continual restoration. And I wonder if this isn't one of those ways that God has just kind of forced us to move and to get out of our comfort zones and to rethink everything and to continue down that path that was started a while back of restoration and continually seeking those things. And I think that's something to, one of the things I've learned in some of the discussions with these guys in other areas is just how earlier cultures attributed everything to God. It wasn't like they said everything and go, well, maybe God caused this. They thought God was behind all of it. And trying to apply that to this, I think that's one of the things God could be doing for us, is pushing us out of those comfort zones and saying, hey, you guys have got to move. You've been sitting for 50, 100 years in the same spot, doing the same things, arguing about translations of the Bible and which songbook you're going to use, right? Move, get beyond all of that nonsense.
There's something else I've noticed, and it comes both from a personal perspective, but also kind of like looking at larger views of things. Our family over the years has essentially had our kids in public school for the most part. And it's been brick and mortar schools, and volunteered as much as we were able and been really involved that way. But we have tons of friends and family who have selected different academic options for the education of their kids, for both core class type stuff and social education, which is a component of both of those areas. But what this year has provided a window into is what it's like to be on the other side. Because for most families, at some point in this year, those who were in brick and mortar schools were now shifted to some variations of hybrids where maybe you're online all week, maybe you're online and then in person twice a week at all the age levels, from kindergarten all the way up to the end of your high school experiences and into secondary schools and into graduate schools. And so everybody had an opportunity to see a window that maybe we weren't really sure about. And what's been interesting academically, educationally, kids have thrived that weren't thriving in the brick and mortar environments. And some kids probably will end up finishing their educations in this new hybrid or virtual environment because they do better there. And that also has kind of shifted into two of the tendrils we've seen where fathers, mothers, families have had to be more hands-on with the spiritual formation of their children than they may have been before. They may have kind of accepted the fallacy that if my kids go to Bible class, that's enough, which was never true before, but now Bible class was at home. And there wasn't a substitute. You can't really do some of the things that take place in those classes. And Shane has done probably some of the better virtual short teaching things for young children. But even then, it's not what they're used to or what they want or what they're trained to learn through. And so it's pushed parents, dads, to a leadership space that they may have just said, well, I don't have to worry about that because somebody else has that part of the puzzle. Well, now they own that puzzle, every edge of it. And I think that's a blessing, even though it's brought challenges, because every blessing comes with responsibilities. They just always do. Just like every curse brings with it responsibilities. There's connections in that concept that we all accept but ignore.
And tied into that for me, for years we've complained about how busy our family is, but at least in that lockdown period, that busyness stopped, right? I think it did for everybody. And we were kind of forced to kind of slow down. And I think there was a benefit to that as well, to take a step back and to realize. And, I realize there's some things maybe we did that weren't that important. And there's some other things that we weren't able to do that were important in the process. But that time to kind of reboot your life and to think about everything, just another blessing along those lines. And I think that's part of, point that to Phil about parents getting more involved in the teaching of their kids. For a lot of us, as our kids grew older, we kind of let that slide a little bit. We let that Bible teaching thing kind of just drift off to the Bible class teachers, and it allowed us to reboot and remember, hey, this is important and I've got a role in this. I think that's powerful as well.
Can I offer not a rebuttal, but a different perspective? Being the husband of a public school teacher who didn't get to reboot, but was shoved into a completely different format. And also, I've probably worked harder, at least mentally, since March, not just shepherding, but teaching, because, I was forced out of a 3 decades long, little rut
Paradise
into videoing. And I'm so thankful for my IT guy. Steve Summercrest is my IT guy, and no, you can't have him. He has taken so much of that I know a lot of preachers have had to handle themselves. And bless your heart if you are your own IT guy. I'm from Kentucky. I know what bless your heart means. And but forcing myself to rest mentally has been, it's weird. And, I'm finding myself more emotional, which, if you know me at all, I'm a very emotional person. And it's just the self-reflection this year for me and for Cindy. Just about 3 weeks ago, we were sitting one night, kind of zoning out, watching. Here come the darts, a Hallmark movie, and we were just talking about the weight. She got to a point in early November, where she just kind of broke one day. And first of all, I'd never seen that I mean, my wife is a formidable woman. I mean, she married me, for crying out loud. And and then I thought, I wonder how many others have had that moment and haven't shared it. And I thought about a couple of moments where I've just been, it's been really instructive for me, and how important it is to decompress so you don't do something rash, so that you have some understanding of where you are and what you're doing and what needs to happen, and prioritize maybe more than just going to the building, checking off a list of things that you need to do as the preacher, because admittedly, one of the parts in doing the work is that it can become more of a job than a calling. It can become more of I got to do this, because after all, I'm getting paid to do it, and making it more about reality, a spiritual reality, and what needs to happen, and how much servants are really called to be serving in the kingdom.
Yeah, and I think both. I'm sorry, I'm going to say both of those are true. Like, I can't imagine the mental anxiety and stress we've all carried through this with my schedule pre-COVID. By the way, I would have been in the hospital, just with all the soccer practices and doctor's appointments and all stuff that had to be shut down. I don't know how we could have survived, and I think both of those things go hand in hand, thankfully. Shane?
Yeah, I was just going to say what Mark just said triggered something that I'd like to suggest that we do. Now, I know that some guys like Phillip have really had to be the primary IT tech person to kind of navigate through these new circumstances. But I know that there's several people that I can mention that I want to pay tribute to, who are people who work behind the scenes. Nobody would ever see them really in action, but they're the ones who have made it possible for me to not have to do anything other than learn how to hit the record button. So Jackson Sneed and Kyle Jackson and Bill Warren and Jeremy Murrell have helped us keep everything going, and have made the teaching that we've done at Valrico just as seamless as I could possibly imagine. And I was thinking maybe it'd be a good idea, if there are people that have been serving that role for you in different capacities, to just kind of give them a shout out.
Well, I can tell you that my IT guy is Phil Martin, and he's available to everybody. I'm not joking, because when I was having to do this from home, Phil was the guy. And then what was funny is, because I had people started calling me, asking me for how to do things, and all I was doing was regurgitating the stuff that Phil taught me, largely because Phil was already on another Zoom call with somebody else at the same time. And Phil's a nerd who overthinks through everything, by the way, and has spreadsheets for everything. And so, if you ask him what webcam you should get, he'll have a spreadsheet on webcams and the one you should get, and 10 other ones you shouldn't get, and all of that. And I'm glad Phil's there, because I don't have to do that. I also have some deacons that, now that we're back at the building, are very integral to all of this. John Clemens and his sons, John Dean, got a lot of guys that do that stuff. But no kidding, in those couple months when I was from home, I was able to get a lot of stuff set up, a lot of shortcuts, a lot of things I didn't know about because of Phil the nerd over there. And so I'm grateful to that. We've joked around on Do the Work that he's been the tech guy. If you go back and see when Phil's out of town, it never goes right when I'm the tech guy. But Phil's the tech guy, and he does a great job for that. And the great thing about Phil is he's available to anybody and everybody.
I'm liking you less and less right now.
Yeah, well, because he has a good heart. So if you need help, just send Phil a message.
I want to end, last Sunday, just to kind of put things in perspective, we have a couple of wonderful families at Eastside who volunteered to start setting up, taking down, and handling all of the live stream controls and everything. And so I didn't touch a thing Sunday for our services. And you may note that the sound is great and everything went well, and I had no hand in the mixer. That could
how many of you think that he was sweating the entire time he didn't have control of that?
That's a clue right there. And look, I think those families, and it's Stuart and Wes and his wife Christina, and then the other family is interesting because they're a couple that recently joined the congregation. She, Angelin, was recently converted. He was recently restored. So Stanley and Angelin stepped in and immediately started serving not only their brethren, but the brethren that they have never met, because some of these new members haven't really interacted physically, personally, with some of the congregation because of the constrictions on their lives. So we have a couple of sisters who still haven't been able to leave their home/facility because they're not allowed to yet. And so they haven't actually interacted with their brethren on a person-to-person, first place basis, but they're blessing that family by their service. And that's just been wonderful.
Jared, you got anybody to throw out there?
Yeah, I'm using right now a webcam that Phil recommended on a tripod that he sent me. And so, where we're at, we don't have elders, we don't have deacons. It was kind of a one-man show times two with me and David just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, figuring things out. So I will echo that Phil was super helpful in that, although all errors go to me. The number of times I had to re-record sermons was real high.
That's why Phil. I told everybody go live. That way you can't start over. You just have to keep. You have to keep going.
Exactly. That I am thankful for. Just because, and things have gotten easier as I've gotten more used to it. It's still just a lot of work, and I know people who do that, whether that's doing it yourself, or like where Shane's at, with Jackson and other people helping out, or I don't know who's got Mark and everything. That is an enormous help. I think a lot about when the apostles are figuring things out, at the beginning of Acts, and they're like, hey, look, should we stop teaching that we can wait on tables? And, there's the argument of whether that means like acting as waiters, probably means being bankers. But the ability
That's another episode.
Exactly. But the ability that we can, if you've got someone who can take off some of that administrative load so that you can spend more time on preaching and teaching and studying, that's an enormous blessing if you've got it. And the people who are doing that are enormous blessings. And you think a lot about Paul's discussion of the church. Like we're the faces, we're the voices. We get a lot of the accolades, but we're not the only ones doing all the work. And so often it's so many other people doing so many other things, whether it's cleaning the building or if it's cleaning the songbooks or whatever, all those million little things that can distract or help you in your worship. They're just as to be thanked for anything that we're able to accomplish as what we do. It's just we're the things people see.
Yeah, Bob McPherson says that Phil's beard was black in March. It was actually more red, but it's not as it's more gray now than
I'm the only one here without gray hair. Let me just throw that out there. Of course, I think I have the least hair of any of us on the group, so there is that.
Yeah.
But what I have, boys and girls, is still dark.
And I am shocked that you made it through Peyton Francis and Jesse Martin without gray hair.
Jesse Martin's not gone yet, so we'll see.
I'll try it.
Hey, we're out of time. Let's do Around the Horn real quick. We'll just kind of go through, and it's our last show for the year. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Just any closing thoughts to throw out there. So, Jared, I'll start with you.
Just continue to look for ways to serve. For anybody who's listening, look for ways to serve. This is suffering's greatest danger is it can make you selfish. But instead, it should realize that, look, if I'm suffering, other people are too. And it doesn't matter if my suffering's worse or less than theirs. That doesn't matter. Look for ways to serve. Look for ways to help people. Look for ways to bear your own cross, to bear another's burdens. And if that's the case, then 2020 or a million years like it, or worse than, will only make you stronger.
Great thoughts. Shane?
Yeah, I would go back to something you said sort of early on in the broadcast, Terry, which is when the ball drops and 2021 begins, nothing else will have changed other than the number on the calendar. And so don't put your hope in some kind of artificial change of circumstance. Instead, do what Jerry just said and put the focus on who you are inwardly. And then it doesn't matter what the number is on the calendar, you'll be focused on God and serving other people in the way that we should be.
Amen. Mark?
Well, I have been the recipient of so much praise and encouragement and comedy being around folks, and it's been highlighted by the negatives of the year. I mean, this isn't trying to put lipstick on a pig here, boys. It's been a tough year, but there are blessings to be seen in it. And your work, Phillip and Terry, what you have done with Do the Work, and Jared, you and Phillip with the Judges and the Warlords, and Shane, what you and Phillip have done with theology study, all of it is, of course, all praise goes to our Father. But you also give credit to whom credit is due. And all you boys are doing good work. And I appreciate your friendship, fellowship, and the work that you're doing. And I look forward to even more and spending some time at your feet listening, because you've stretched me, and I appreciate you all. And I'm just really thankful that this awful has brought us and even others closer together for this time. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to go and then toss it to Phil to wrap us up, because that's his job always on this show. I just think I want to leave you with the idea of try to be the light and be the positive, rather than focusing on all the negative. Look, at the end of the day, everything bad still has some good that comes from it, and I think that's something that we've got to be focused on. Every tragedy you go through helps you grow and strengthens you in ways that often you may not realize till later on. And I think that right now we're so focused on 2020 as such a wearisome and fatigue type year. But I think later on, hopefully, we'll be able to look back and realize that it reshaped us and remolded us into something that we needed to be. And as we go forward, just to chime in with all these guys saying, hey, look, the calendar's going to switch. Nothing's going to change. We as God's people have got to go out and be the light of the world. And that doesn't just mean, by the way, exposing things in darkness like we often want to talk about. Being the light of the world means giving hope. We are the light at the end of the tunnel that is 2020. And Jesus is the ultimate light that we're just reflecting. And one of the things we need to do is we need to stop complaining. We need to stop being so vocal about the things that we don't like, whatever that may be. And we need to start turning around and seeing this as an opportunity and helping people see that all of this is temporary. All of this doesn't matter. There's something greater. This hope that we have in Jesus Christ is what the world needs right now. So let's focus on that. I think for a lot of us, this show's called Do the Work. For a lot of us, not just preachers, but a lot of us that are just pew sitters, we've gotten out of the work because we're so just worn down from 2020. And it's time for us to get back to who we're supposed to be and go do the work of a disciple and go do some disciple making and teaching and be the light to the world. And I leave you with that as we approach the next year. Phil?
I want to kind of conclude with this little thought. I'm thankful for adversity. Adversity is something that God grants us as a privilege to prepare us for the journey of tomorrow. And I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I know that we've needed whatever it is He's thrown at us this particular season. It's been a proving and a training ground, or a lab, as Bob said earlier. And that sometimes requires us to accept the adversity, because we are going to need that skill in the future. And so in very specific senses, I'm thankful for the thorny personalities that have surrounded us. I'm thankful for those who ask hard questions that cause me to think deeper and more widely about what I believe and what God has taught. And I think that's something that we need to do as believers, is to accept that reality. Far too often, we're only looking for, the upper crusty surface layer of things, but there's actually within the heart of a person where the great change takes place. And as always, the greatest change that we can really have the strongest control over is the change we choose to engage and that we choose to share. And so my suggestion, and maybe encouragement to everybody, as we kind of close out this calendar here, is to really embrace the year rather than trying to let it fly away or forget it. And that includes the tremendous sorrow that the year has brought to many. No matter what a person felt, it's been a sorrowful journey, and I'm thankful for that too, because as the wisdom of Solomon might remind us, going to a house of mourning is better than a house of praise. And we want better things because we serve a better king who's part of a better kingdom. That's my gracious gift to everybody this year. May God bless.